Ruth Okonkwo stepped off the plane at JFK with one suitcase, a work visa valid for 6 months, and $340 in cash. The penthouse job paid $3,200 monthly, triple what she made in Lagos caring for bedridden patients at the Anglican Mission Hospital. Her grandmother died 3 years ago, saying one thing Ruth couldn't forget: your hands know what to do when someone can't stand.
It's so good
Don't
to
forget
see
that.
you. Oh, my
Ruth
dear,
hadn't
you
forgotten.
too.
She's been
She'd
looking
lifted
forward to
paralyzed
this.
I
women
have.
since age 6, her grandmother first among them. Polio had taken her grandmother's legs at 40. Ruth learned to brace a body's dead weight against her hip, how to shift without dropping, how to bathe someone who couldn't feel water below the waist. She knew the angles that prevented bed sores, the pressure points that kept blood moving in numb limbs, the difference between a woman who'd given up and a woman waiting for a reason not to. The penthouse occupied the entire 43rd floor of a building on East 72nd Street. When the elevator doors opened, Ruth saw more marble than she'd seen in her life. White floors stretched to floor-to-ceiling windows. 3 chandeliers hung from the ceiling before Ruth stopped counting. A hallway branched left toward what looked like 8 closed doors. The view showed the East River, gray and wide under February clouds. Margaret Clark, 58, efficient posture, navy dress, met Ruth at the elevator. The housekeeper's handshake was brief. "You're the Nigerian girl. The agency said you have experience with paralysis cases." "Yes, ma'am. 16 years. Margaret's eyebrow went up. "You're 27. "I started young." Margaret led Ruth down the east corridor. The hallway was longer than Ruth's entire apartment back in Abeokuta. Photographs lined the walls. A younger woman in academic robes shaking hands with someone important. The same woman at a podium, mid-speech, glasses catching the light. A wedding photo. The woman in white next to a black man in a gray suit, both smiling like they'd just won something. Barbara Thompson, 71, paralyzed from the waist down, car accident 3 years back. Her husband died in the same crash. She was a professor before that. English literature, Columbia. Taught there for 30 years. Margaret stopped at a door, hand on the knob. "She's sharp. Don't baby her. She hates that." The room was bright. A hospital bed disguised as a regular one sat against the far wall, unused. A bookshelf covered the entire west side, floor to ceiling, every shelf packed. Titles Ruth recognized: Morrison, Baldwin, Angelou, Hurston, Walker. A desk held a lamp and a stack of papers covered in handwritten notes. Near the window, a wheelchair. Barbara Thompson sat facing the glass, back to the door. White hair cropped short, almost military. Thin shoulders under a cream cardigan. In her lap, a book. Ruth could see the spine from the doorway. "Beloved, Toni Morrison." Margaret cleared her throat. Barbara didn't turn around. Her voice came out clipped, Professor Sharp. "You're Nigerian." Not a question. Ruth stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am. Lagos. Before that, Abeokuta, Ogun State." "Yoruba or Igbo?" "Yoruba. I taught Things Fall Apart for 20 years. Undergraduate survey course, post-colonial literature unit. Most students wrote papers saying Okonkwo was a tragic hero, victim of colonialism, cultural clash, etc. Very sympathetic. What do you think?" Ruth didn't hesitate. She'd read Akebe twice, once in secondary school, once at her grandmother's bedside during the last month when morphine made the old woman want stories. "I think he was stupid. Brave, but stupid. My uncle was like that. Brave enough to fight everyone, too stupid to know when to stop fighting. Killed himself the same way, too. Hanged himself after he lost everything arguing with people who didn't care if he lived or died." The wheelchair turned. Manual, not electric. Barbara's hands on the wheels, arms shaking slightly from the effort. She was smaller than Ruth expected, 71 years old but compressed, like someone had taken a taller woman and pressed her down. Round glasses sat crooked on her nose. Dark eyes behind them, examining. "You'll do." Margaret left. Ruth stayed. Barbara gestured at the bookshelf. I can't reach the top 3 shelves anymore, and I can't read for more than an hour without my neck cramping from the angle. You'll need to hold books at eye level if I ask. I read aloud sometimes. You'll hear me. Don't interrupt unless I mispronounce something, which I won't." Ruth nodded. "The bathroom through that door has bars installed. I can transfer myself from the chair to the toilet. I cannot transfer myself to the bathtub. You'll lift me. I weigh 112 pounds. If you drop me, you're fired." "I won't drop you." "Good. Tuesdays and Fridays are bath days. Morning, 9 a.m. sharp. I don't like cold water. I don't like being touched more than necessary. Do your job. Don't chat. Don't pity me." "Yes, ma'am." Barbara rolled the wheelchair to the desk, picked up a piece of paper, held it out. Ruth took it. A schedule. Times, tasks, medications, everything typed, single-spaced. "Margaret handles the household. I handle my own care, or rather, you'll handle it under my instruction. Michael, my stepson, owns this penthouse. He works 16-hour days. You'll rarely see him. When you do, don't bother him with small talk. He doesn't have time for it." Ruth scanned the schedule. Bath, 9 a.m. Breakfast, 10 a.m. Physical therapy exercises, 11 a.m. Lunch, 1 p.m. Reading time, 3 p.m. Dinner, 6 p.m. Evening routine, 8 p.m. Lights out, 10 p.m. "You start tomorrow. Your room is at the end of the hall, past the kitchen. Margaret will show you. Salary is $3,200 monthly, paid on the 1st. You get Sundays off unless I'm sick, in which case you don't." Ruth folded the paper, put it in her pocket. "One more thing." Barbara's voice dropped, not in volume but in weight. "I've had 4 caregivers in 3 years. They all quit. Not because I'm difficult, though I am. They quit because they couldn't stand watching someone like me exist. Former professor, current vegetable, they thought, waste of space. I could see it in their faces every time they had to wipe me or lift me. You have that look on your face?" Ruth met her eyes. "No, ma'am. My grandmother had polio. I wiped her and lifted her from when I was 6 until she died when I was 22. She wasn't a waste of space. She was the smartest person I ever met. You remind me of her." Something happened on Barbara's face. Not a smile. The space before a smile. "Good. Then we'll get along." Ruth started the next afternoon. Margaret showed her the room at the end of the service corridor, 12 by 10 feet, a single bed, a dresser, a window facing the building next door. Bathroom down the hall, shared with the day maid who came in at 6 a.m. and left by 2 p.m. Ruth unpacked her suitcase. 5 shirts, 3 pairs of pants, 2 skirts, 1 good dress for church, underwear, a photograph of her grandmother in a wooden frame. She set the photo on the dresser. Her grandmother's face stared back, unsmiling, glasses identical to the ones Barbara wore. The first week, Ruth learned Barbara's body, how much pressure the skin could take before bruising, the angle of the legs that prevented spasms, the way Barbara's left shoulder locked if raised too fast, old injury from the accident. Ruth bathed her on Tuesday, 9 a.m. exactly. The bathroom had been renovated. Grab bars bolted to the walls, a shower chair, non-slip mats. Ruth transferred Barbara from the wheelchair to the chair, steadied her, washed her back first, then arms, then legs Barbara couldn't feel. The water was hot, not scalding. Barbara didn't speak during the bath. Her jaw stayed tight, eyes on the wall. Afterward, Ruth dried her, transferred her back to the wheelchair, wheeled her to the bed, dressed her, navy slacks, cream blouse, soft shoes Barbara would never walk in. The whole process took 47 minutes. On Friday, the second bath, Ruth finished in 42. Barbara noticed. "You're faster." "I'm learning." "Don't get cocky. I've had fast caregivers. Fast usually means careless." "I'm not careless." "Prove it." The second week, Ruth noticed Barbara's hair, white, thin, tangled at the back where she couldn't reach. Wednesday morning, after breakfast, Ruth brought a comb. "Your hair needs detangling." "I'm aware. I could braid it, small braids close to the scalp. My grandmother wore them. They last 2 weeks. Stay neat. No brushing needed. Barbara stared at her. I'm 71 years old. My grandmother was 83 when she died. She wore braids until the end. Said they made her feel like a queen. Silence. Barbara's hands gripped the armrests. Then quietly. Do it. Ruth braided. Small cornrows, tight, even. It took an hour and 20 minutes. Her fingers worked from muscle memory, the same pattern she'd done 1,000 times on her grandmother's head. When she finished, she held up a mirror. Barbara touched the braids like reading Braille. Her fingertips traced one row from forehead to nape. Her mouth opened slightly, closed, opened again. I look like a queen. I was going to say ridiculous. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Barbara laughed. The sound was short, surprised, like a cough that turned into something human. It filled the room, bounced off the bookshelves, hung in the air after it stopped. Ruth heard footsteps in the hallway, someone walking toward the door, then stopping, then walking away. The jollof rice started the following Tuesday. Ruth had noticed the kitchen after her shift ended. The chef, a Frenchman named Pierre, left at 7 p.m. The kitchen stayed empty after that. Ruth found Scotch bonnets in the spice drawer, tomatoes and onions in the walk-in cooler, rice in the pantry. She couldn't cook in the small kitchen near her room. That space had a hot plate and a microwave, but the main kitchen had 6 burners and counter space bigger than her childhood home. She cooked at 8 p.m. Onions, tomatoes, peppers, Scotch bonnets sliced thin. The smell built slowly, then all at once. Orange and aggressive. Ruth let it simmer, stirring every 5 minutes, adding chicken stock and bay leaves. By 9 p.m., the kitchen smelled like Lagos. She brought a bowl to Barbara's room. Barbara was reading. She looked up, nose wrinkling. What is that? Jollof rice. It's orange. It's supposed to be. It smells like it's arguing with me. Ruth set the bowl on the desk. In Nigeria, polite food is bad food. This is proper food. Barbara picked up the spoon, took one bite, then another, then a third. She ate the entire bowl without speaking. When she finished, she set the spoon down carefully. Tuesdays. Ma'am, make this every Tuesday, not Wednesdays, not Saturdays. Tuesdays. I need something to look forward to. From then on, Tuesday became jollof rice day. Ruth cooked it at 8 p.m., brought it to Barbara's room at 9. They didn't talk much during those meals. Barbara ate. Ruth sat in the chair by the window, watching the East River turn black under the night sky. Sometimes Barbara would ask a question. How much pepper did you use? Is this chicken or vegetable stock? Did you toast the rice first? And Ruth would answer. But mostly it was quiet. The good kind of quiet. The kind that happens when 2 people understand they're building something that doesn't need explaining. The 3rd week, Ruth started reading aloud. Barbara had been struggling with a new book, The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. Her neck kept cramping from the angle. Ruth offered, I can hold it for you. Read it out loud if you want. I don't need you to read to me like I'm a child. I'm not reading to you. I'm reading with you. There's a difference. Barbara considered this, then handed over the book. Ruth read. She had a good voice for it, clear and steady. She didn't perform the words, didn't add drama. Just read them as Baldwin wrote them. When she finished the first essay, Barbara interrupted. You read well. My grandmother couldn't see well her last 5 years. I read to her every night. What did you read? Everything. Bible, newspapers, novels she borrowed from the church library. She liked American writers. Said they understood anger better than anyone else. She was right. They started reading together every afternoon, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Ruth would read, Barbara would listen, then Barbara would stop her and they'd argue. About Baldwin's thesis, about whether anger was productive, about the difference between rage and resistance. Barbara had 30 years of teaching behind her arguments. Ruth had 16 years of watching her grandmother survive in a country that treated disabled women like burdens. They were evenly matched. One Tuesday, after jollof rice, after an hour of arguing about whether Baldwin or Morrison was braver, Barbara said something Ruth hadn't expected. You're the first person in 3 years who's treated me like I'm still myself." Ruth didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Just sat there in the chair by the window, watching Barbara's face in the lamplight. The 4th week, Ruth met Michael Thompson. He came home at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday, rare for him according to Margaret. Ruth was in the kitchen cleaning up after cooking. She heard footsteps, turned around. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, black, late 30s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ruth's annual salary. His tie was loose, top button undone. He looked exhausted. "You're the new caregiver." "Yes, sir. Ruth Okonkwo." "Michael Thompson." He didn't offer his hand. "How's my mother?" "She's well. Sleeping now." "She eating?" "Yes, sir. Full meals, regular schedule." "Good." He opened the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of water, drank half of it standing there. "The last caregiver said my mother was declining. Memory issues, confusion, not eating. Is that what you're seeing?" Ruth chose her words carefully. "Your mother has the sharpest memory of anyone I've met. She can quote entire paragraphs from books she read 40 years ago. She remembers every conversation we've had, corrects me if I misremember something from last week, and she eats everything I cook on Tuesdays." Michael stopped drinking, looked at Ruth directly for the first time. "You cook for her?" "Jollof rice. Tuesdays. She requested it." Something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe. "She requested it?" "Yes, sir." He finished the water, threw the bottle in the recycling bin. "Keep doing whatever you're doing." He left. Ruth heard him walk down the hallway, a door open and close. She finished cleaning, went to her room, lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The last caregiver said Barbara was declining. Memory issues, confusion. Ruth thought about Barbara quoting Baldwin from memory, about the way she never forgot a single detail of their arguments, about how her eyes were sharp as glass when she looked at you. Declining. The word sat wrong. The 5th week, Ruth met Jessica Martinez. Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Ruth was helping Barbara with physical therapy exercises in the living room. Leg lifts, passive range of motion, keeping the muscles from atrophying completely. The elevator dinged. A woman stepped out. Early 30s, white, blonde hair in perfect waves, designer dress, heels that clicked on the marble. She carried a bouquet of white roses in one hand, phone in the other. "Barbara! Oh my goodness, look at you! You look so vibrant today." Jessica crossed the room fast, knelt beside the wheelchair, took Barbara's hand. Her smile was wide, practiced. "I brought you flowers. White roses, your favorite. I'll have Margaret put them in your room." Barbara's voice came out small. "Thank you, Jessica." Jessica looked up, noticed Ruth for the first time. "Oh, you must be the new help. Margaret mentioned you. From Africa, right?" Her smile got wider. "I just love authentic cultures. I actually have a whole section on my Instagram about celebrating diversity." "What country are you from?" "Nigeria." "Nigeria? I've always wanted to visit. The colors, the fabrics, the food. It's all so vibrant. I bet you have so many stories." Ruth kept her face neutral. "I'm the caregiver. Yes, ma'am." "Well, Barbara is so lucky to have you. We've been so worried about her. Haven't we, Barbara?" Barbara's hands gripped the armrests. "Yes." Jessica stood, smoothed her dress. "I can't stay long. Lunch meeting in Soho, but I wanted to check on my favorite mother-in-law-to-be." She leaned down, kissed Barbara's cheek. "You rest, okay? I'll be back tomorrow. Same time." She left in a cloud of perfume. The elevator doors closed. The roses sat on the side table, stems bleeding water onto the marble. Ruth looked at Barbara. Barbara was staring at her lap, jaw tight. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." But her hands were still gripping the armrests. White knuckles. Ruth noticed. That night, Ruth couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Jessica's smile. Too perfect. Too wide. The way she'd called Barbara vibrant when Barbara had barely said 3 words. The way Barbara's whole body had tensed when Jessica touched her. Ruth's grandmother used to say, when someone is too careful with their kindness, they're hiding the opposite. The 6th week, Ruth found the first bruise. Tuesday morning, bath day. Ruth was helping Barbara out of her nightgown when she saw it, inside of the upper arm where the sleeve would cover it. Purple, 3 inches long, the shape of fingertips. How did this happen? Barbara pulled her arm back. I'm clumsy. Wheelchair arms don't leave fingerprints. I bumped it on the door frame. Ruth touched the bruise gently. Barbara flinched. The marks were too clear, too deliberate. 3 fingers. A grab, not a bump. Who grabbed you? No one. I told you I bumped it. Ruth let it go. But she took a photo on her phone when Barbara wasn't looking. Timestamp, February 11th, 9:14 a.m. The 7th week, Ruth came back from laundry duty at 4 p.m. Barbara's door was slightly open. Ruth heard voices. She slowed down, stood in the hallway. Jessica's voice, low, almost a whisper. You know he'll put you in a facility eventually. After the wedding. Nice place. Clean. Probably upstate, near the river. You'll have your books. But Michael won't visit much because I'll explain to him that the facility has better care, trained staff, people who understand your needs better than family can. He'll believe me. He always believes me. Barbara's voice, barely audible. Please don't. Then don't make me. When Dr. Harris comes next week, you'll tell him you've been confused, forgetting things, losing track of time. Do you understand? Silence. Barbara, do you understand? Yes. Ruth stood in the hallway. Her hands gripped the laundry basket so hard the plastic edges cut into her palms. She set the basket down quietly, pulled out her phone, opened the voice recorder, held it near the door crack. Pressed record. Jessica's voice continued. Good. Because I care about you, Barbara. I really do. I want what's best for you. And what's best is professional care in a place designed for people like you. Michael will understand that. He'll thank me for thinking ahead. Footsteps. Ruth grabbed the laundry basket, walked quickly to the linen closet, shoved everything inside. Jessica came out of Barbara's room, saw Ruth, smiled that perfect smile. Oh, Ruth, I didn't know you were here. I was just visiting with Barbara. She seems a little tired today. Maybe let her rest? Yes, ma'am. Jessica left. Ruth waited until the elevator doors closed, then went to Barbara's room. Barbara was facing the window, not moving. Ruth didn't say anything, just walked over, knelt beside the wheelchair, put her hand on Barbara's hand. Barbara's fingers were ice cold. The 8th week, Ruth went to Michael's office. She'd thought about it for 6 days, played out the conversation a dozen different ways. But there was no good way to do this. She knocked on the glass door. Michael looked up from his computer. Ruth, is my mother all right? Can I speak with you? It's important. He gestured at the chair across from his desk. Ruth sat. She pulled out her phone, found the photo of the bruise. Your mother has a bruise on her arm. This is a grab mark. Someone put their hand on her hard enough to leave fingerprints. Michael took the phone, zoomed in, stared at the image. Who did this? I don't know for certain, but I have a recording I think you should hear. She played the audio. Jessica's voice clear in the quiet office. Facility. Professional care. He'll believe me. Michael's face went blank. He set the phone down carefully. Where did you get this? I recorded it outside your mother's room, last Tuesday. Jessica was talking to her about putting her in a nursing home. Michael picked up his office phone, pressed a button. Can you come to my office now? 6 minutes later, Jessica walked in. She saw Ruth, and something flickered across her face. Surprise. Then it was gone, replaced by the smile. Michael, what's wrong? Is Barbara okay? Michael played the recording. Jessica's face didn't change. She listened all the way through. When it ended, her eyes filled with tears. Instant, like turning on a faucet. Oh my God, Michael, that's completely out of context. I was talking to Barbara about a friend of mine whose mother just went into memory care. Barbara asked me how it works, what the facilities are like. I was explaining the process because she was curious, not because I would never threaten her. How could you think that? The tears spilled over, perfect, glistening. Michael's voice was careful. Ruth says there's a bruise, that someone grabbed my mother. Jessica's hand went to her mouth. A bruise? Is she okay? Michael, I swear I don't know anything about that. Maybe she bumped into something? You know how fragile her skin is. Or maybe... She looked at Ruth, the tears still falling. I don't want to accuse anyone, but she's alone with Barbara all day. Maybe we should ask... That's enough. Barbara's voice from the doorway. Margaret stood behind her, hands on the wheelchair. Michael stood up. Mom, what happened? Did someone hurt you? Barbara looked at Ruth, then at Jessica. Jessica's face was all concern now, tears drying, eyes wide with worry. Ruth watched Barbara's throat work, watched her hands grip the armrests, watched her look at Jessica's face and see something there that made her voice come out small. No, the maid misunderstood. Jessica has been very kind to me. The floor dropped out from under Ruth's feet. Michael turned to Ruth. My mother has spoken. I don't know what your agenda is here, but if you make accusations like this again, we'll have to reconsider your employment. Do you understand? Ruth's voice came out steady. Yes, sir. Jessica left first, touching Michael's arm on the way out, whispering something Ruth couldn't hear. Margaret wheeled Barbara away. Ruth stood alone in the office. Michael sat back down, already looking at his computer screen. You can go. Ruth went to her room, lay on her bed, stared at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. You made a mistake today. Don't make another one. Ruth deleted it, then lay there until her shift started again. That night, she went to Barbara's room. Barbara was in bed, staring at the wall. I'm sorry. Barbara didn't look at her. You shouldn't have done that. I was trying to help. You don't understand. She'll put me in a facility. She's been telling Michael for months that I'm confused, that I'm declining. She brought Dr. Harris in to evaluate me. He asked me what year it is, who the president is. I answered correctly, but he wrote down that I was hesitant, required prompting. She's building a case. If I accuse her, she'll say I'm paranoid, confused. And Michael will believe her because he already half believes it. Ruth sat down in the chair by the window. You're the sharpest person I've ever met. It doesn't matter what I am. It matters what she can make Michael think I am. Silence. Outside the river was black. Barbara's voice came out quieter. Don't leave me alone with her. Ruth looked at her, this small woman in a wheelchair, compressed by 3 years of people deciding she didn't matter anymore. I'm not going anywhere. The 9th week, Ruth changed her strategy. She stopped trying to convince Michael, started documenting everything. She bought a notebook from the bodega on 72nd Street, hid it under her mattress. Every time Jessica visited, Ruth wrote it down. Time arrived, time left. Barbara's mood before and after. She kept the voice recording backed up in 3 places. Took photos of every bruise, every time Barbara seemed more withdrawn after Jessica's visits. Jessica came every day at 11:30 a.m., always with flowers, always with the smile, always alone with Barbara for exactly 30 minutes. Ruth started finding excuses to walk past the door during those 30 minutes, delivering fresh water, bringing medication early, checking if Barbara needed anything. Jessica never did anything obvious when Ruth was there, just sat in the chair, talked in that bright voice about her Instagram followers, her brand partnerships, how much she loved Barbara, how excited she was to be part of the family. But Ruth noticed Barbara shrank a little more each time. The 10th week, Ruth found Barbara's glasses hidden in a bureau drawer. She'd been looking for a pair of socks Barbara had asked for. Opened the wrong drawer, found the glasses wrapped in a tissue, pushed to the back. Ruth brought them to Barbara. Barbara was sitting in the wheelchair by the window, staring at nothing. Her face was blank, lost. How long have these been missing? Barbara's voice was dull. What day is it? Thursday. 2 days then. 2 days. Barbara couldn't read without her glasses, couldn't see the river clearly, couldn't be herself without books and the view, just sitting there in the blur, waiting. Ruth cleaned the lenses with her apron, knelt beside the wheelchair, placed the glasses on Barbara's face gently, the way she used to do for her grandmother. Barbara's eyes focused, the room sharpened, the bookshelves, the window, Ruth's face. Barbara's hands started shaking. "Thank you." Her voice broke on the second word. That night Ruth lay in her bed and cried. Not for herself. For the woman down the hall who couldn't cry for herself because crying meant admitting you were breakable, and Barbara Thompson had spent 3 years refusing to break. Ruth was almost asleep when she heard it. A sound from Barbara's room. A yelp, cut short. She got up, walked quickly down the hallway, didn't knock, opened the door. Jessica was standing over the wheelchair. Barbara's hand was in her lap, pinky fingers swelling, turning red. Jessica's right heel was next to Barbara's hand on the armrest. Black stiletto. The position was wrong. The heel had been on the hand. Jessica looked up, smiled. "Oh, Ruth. I was just adjusting Barbara's blanket. So clumsy of me. Almost tripped." Ruth looked at Barbara's face. Barbara's jaw was clenched, eyes wet, but not crying. Ruth looked at the black stiletto, then at the swelling finger. "I'll get ice." That night, Ruth iced Barbara's hand, wrapped the pinky finger carefully. "Why don't you tell him?" Barbara's voice was tired. "She's building a case that I'm incompetent. Medical records, doctor's notes, witness statements. If I tell Michael she's hurting me, she'll say I'm paranoid, delusional, and he'll believe her because she's been preparing him to believe her for months." "You're not delusional. It doesn't matter what I am." Ruth photographed the swollen finger, then photographed the black stiletto Jessica had left by the door. Time, 8:47 p.m. Date, March 3rd, week 11. Ruth found papers in Michael's study. She'd been vacuuming, not snooping. But the trash can was full, and the cleaning service didn't come until Friday. She pulled out the bag to empty it. Papers fell out. Forms. Petition for determination of incapacity. Barbara Thompson's name at the top. Signature line at the bottom. Blank. Another page. Letter to Riverside Senior Living Facility, Upstate New York. Already typed, already addressed, waiting for a signature. Ruth smoothed the papers on the floor, took photos, every page, put them back in the trash exactly as she'd found them. That night she couldn't sleep. She opened her phone, searched Determination of Incapacity, New York. Read for 2 hours. Learned that if a person was declared legally incompetent, their assets could be transferred to their guardian. Learned that medical evidence was key. Learned that family members could petition. Learned that it happened more often than people thought, especially to elderly people, especially to disabled people, especially to people whose families wanted their money. Week 12. Ruth went to Barbara's room with a plan. "I have 3 months of evidence, photos, recordings, notes, but it won't matter unless they see it happen." Barbara looked at Ruth. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying next time she threatens you, don't look away. Look at the camera. Let it see your face." Barbara's eyes widened. "There's a camera in my room?" "There's been one for 2 years. I repositioned it last month. Now it sees everything." Barbara was quiet for a long time. "You've been planning this. I've been doing my job. Your job is to bathe me and cook me meals. My job is to make sure you're still here to eat those meals." Barbara's hands unclenched slowly. "What do you need me to do?" "Be brave. Just once. Let her show herself." Week 13. Ruth left Barbara's medical file open on the side table. Not an accident. The page was visible. Dr. Harris's latest note. Patient showing marked cognitive improvement. Engaged, responsive, memory intact. Recommend continuing current care plan. Jessica came at 11:30 a.m. Ruth watched from the hallway. Saw Jessica glance at the file. Saw her face tighten. saw her read it while Barbara was in the bathroom. That afternoon, Jessica stayed for an hour instead of 30 minutes. When she left, Barbara's face was white. Ruth waited until evening. "What did she say?" Barbara's voice shook. "She asked if I was taking new medication, said I seemed different lately. I told her you've been making me laugh." "What did she say to that?" "She said that's wonderful." Barbara looked at Ruth. "But her eyes said I was running out of time." Week 14. Ruth was in her room when she heard the elevator. It was Tuesday, 3:45 p.m. Jessica never came on Tuesday afternoons. Ruth walked quickly to Barbara's room. Empty. She checked the living room. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. She went to the fire stairs, climbed to the rooftop level. The door was unlocked. Ruth pushed it open. Barbara was on the rooftop garden, wheelchair positioned 6 feet from the railing. The brake was on. The chair was angled wrong. If Barbara tried to move, the wheels would roll forward toward the 43-story drop. Barbara sat perfectly still. Her hands gripped the armrests. Ruth walked slowly, didn't run, pulled the wheelchair back, turned it around. Barbara was shaking. "How long were you here?" "I don't know." She said the fresh air would help. Then she left. "I couldn't move. If I tried to turn the chair, I'd roll forward. I couldn't reach the brake from this angle." Ruth didn't say anything, just wheeled Barbara to the elevator, took a photo of the rooftop before they left. The railing, the position where the wheelchair had been, the angle. Time, 3:52 p.m. Week 15. Jessica brought Dr. Kenneth Harris to the penthouse. Thursday morning. Ruth wasn't supposed to be there, but she'd switched shifts with the day maid. She stood in the hallway while the doctor examined Barbara. Dr. Harris's voice, professional. "What year is it, Mrs. Thompson?" Barbara. 2025. "Who is the current president?" Barbara. "Joe Biden." A pause. "Though that might change in the next election." "Do you know where you are right now?" "My bedroom, 43rd floor, East 72nd Street, Manhattan." "Very good." Ruth heard pages turning. Then Jessica's voice, lower but still audible. "Doctor, can I speak with you privately before you write the report?" They moved to the hallway. Ruth pressed herself against the wall near the linen closet. "Jessica, I know she seems lucid right now, but there are episodes. Times when she doesn't recognize me. Times when she insists things happened that didn't happen. Michael doesn't see it because he's never here. But I'm here every day." Dr. Harris. "I haven't observed any cognitive deficits." "Because she's performing for you. She knows this is an evaluation. Please, in your report, just note that there are concerns, that further monitoring is recommended. That's all I'm asking." Silence. Then Dr. Harris. "I'll note that family has expressed concerns about intermittent confusion, but my clinical findings don't support a diagnosis of incompetence at this time." "Thank you. That's all I needed." Ruth recorded the whole thing on her phone. Week 16. Ruth told Margaret she had a doctor's appointment, needed Wednesday afternoon off. Margaret approved. Ruth didn't go to any appointment. She went to her room, cracked the door, phone in hand, recording app open. At 2:30 p.m., Jessica came to Barbara's room. Ruth heard her voice through the crack. "Why do you look so happy lately?" Barbara. "I have someone who talks to me, someone who listens." The maid. "Ruth. Her name is Ruth." "Fine. Ruth. She's filling your head with ideas, making you think you're independent when you're not." "I am independent." "You're in a wheelchair, Barbara. You can't even use the bathroom without help." "My legs don't work. My mind works fine." "For now." Jessica's voice dropped. "But Michael is starting to wonder. That's why I brought Dr. Harris. That's why we're documenting everything. Because eventually, you'll slip. Say something confused. Forget something important. And when you do, we'll be ready." Barbara's voice was quiet but steady. "I'm telling Michael, today, when he gets home. I'm telling him everything you've done, everything you've said." Silence. Then Jessica laughed, short, cold. "No, you won't." "I will. He sat with me last night, for an hour. First time in months. He's listening again, and when he listens to me, he'll hear what you are. He'll hear what I tell him you are." The slap was loud, sharp. Ruth counted. 1, 2, 3. Opened the door. Jessica stood with her hand still raised. Barbara's head was turned to the left from impact. Her cheek was red, handprint forming. Her glasses lay on the marble floor, one lens cracked clean through the middle. Ruth looked at the handprint, looked at the broken glasses, looked at Jessica's face, blank now, nothing behind the eyes. She crossed the room. 3 steps. Her right hand came up, palm open. Not a fist, a correction. The way women hit in a Abeokuta market when someone disrespected their mother. Her palm connected with Jessica's face. Jessica fell. Physics in stilettos. She hit the marble on her side, hair fanning out, dress riding up. Her hand went to her cheek. Ruth stepped between the wheelchair and the woman on the floor, planted her feet, didn't move. "Don't touch her again." Behind her, Barbara was crying, not sad crying, the crying that happens when someone finally fights for you. 30 seconds passed. Jessica's face was calculating. Then the tears came, right on schedule, perfect, streaming. The door opened. Michael Thompson walked in. He stopped, looked at the 3 of them. Jessica on the floor, crying. Ruth standing, hand red. Barbara in the wheelchair, bruised face, broken glasses on the marble between them. Jessica spoke first, always first, her voice shaking, tears falling. "She attacked me. I was just visiting Barbara and she... Michael, I'm scared. What if she does it again? What if she hurts Barbara next? I don't feel safe here." Michael's eyes moved to Ruth. "Did you hit her?" Ruth's voice came out level. "Yes." "Why?" Ruth didn't answer, just looked at Barbara. Michael turned to his mother. "What happened here?" Barbara looked at Jessica. Jessica's eyes said, "The facility, alone, no one will believe you." But today was different. Today someone had crossed a room and used her body as a shield. Barbara's voice came out stronger than it had in 3 years. "She hit me first." Michael's jaw tightened as he processed the words. "She hit you first." Barbara's cheek still showed the handprint. Red, distinct, 5 fingers. The broken glasses on the floor caught the afternoon light. Michael's voice came out careful, controlled. "Jessica, is that true?" Jessica was still on the floor, one hand on her cheek, tears streaming. Her voice broke. "Michael, she's confused. I came to visit and Ruth attacked me. Barbara's trying to protect her. Or she's scared. Or she doesn't understand what happened. You know she's been having episodes. I don't have episodes." Barbara's hands gripped the wheelchair armrests. "I have perfect recall. You slapped me. Right here." She pointed at her own cheek. "Ruth walked in and stopped you." Michael looked at Ruth. Ruth stayed silent, feet planted between Barbara and Jessica. He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling building security and the police. No one moves until they get here." Jessica's tears stopped like a switch flipped. Her voice turned cold. "Fine. Call them. Let them arrest your violent domestic worker for assault. Let them see the bruise on my face. Let them ask about her visa status. I'm sure immigration would love to hear about this." Ruth's stomach dropped, but her face didn't change. Michael dialed, spoke into the phone, hung up, looked at Jessica. "Security will be here in 3 minutes. You can wait in the living room." "I'm not leaving Barbara alone with that woman." "Then wait in the hallway." Jessica stood slowly, smoothed her dress, walked to the hallway. The tears came back as soon as she crossed the threshold. Ruth heard her on the phone, voice shaking. "Can you come? Something terrible happened. I need you." Building security arrived. 2 men in uniforms. Michael explained, domestic dispute, assault, need to separate everyone until police arrive. They asked Jessica to wait in the lobby. She refused at first, then agreed when Michael's voice turned to ice. The elevator doors closed on her perfect, tear-stained face. NYPD showed up 20 minutes later. 2 officers, 1 male, 1 female. They separated everyone. Ruth in her room at the end of the hall, Barbara in her bedroom with Margaret, Michael in his study. The officers took statements. The female officer sat across from Ruth in the small room. "Tell me what happened." Ruth kept it simple. Heard a sound from Barbara's room. Opened the door. Saw Jessica standing over Barbara with her hand raised. Barbara's face red, glasses on the floor broken. Ruth hit Jessica once. Open palm. "Why did you hit her?" "She'd just slapped a 71-year-old woman in a wheelchair." "And you felt you needed to intervene physically?" "Yes." "You understand that's assault. Doesn't matter if someone else hit someone first. You don't have legal authority to strike another person." "I understand." The officer wrote everything down. Asked about Ruth's visa status, work authorization, how long she'd been in the country. Ruth answered every question. 4 months. Work visa valid through August. Employed by Michael Thompson as caregiver for his mother. "Ms. Martinez says this was unprovoked. Says you've been hostile toward her for weeks. Says she has concerns about your treatment of Mrs. Thompson." Ruth said nothing. "Do you have anything to say to that?" "I have evidence that Ms. Martinez has been abusing Mrs. Thompson. Photos, recordings, documentation. I tried to report it to Mr. Thompson 4 weeks ago. He didn't believe me." The officer's pen stopped moving. "You have evidence of elder abuse?" "Yes." "Where is it?" Ruth pulled out her phone, showed the photos, the bruise on Barbara's arm, the swollen finger, the glasses hidden in the drawer, timestamps on everything. Played the audio recording from week 7, Jessica's voice clear. "Facility? Professional care. He'll believe me." The officer listened to the whole thing, then called her partner. They took Ruth's phone as evidence, told her not to leave the building, went to interview Barbara again. Ruth sat in her room. No phone, no idea what was happening. The window showed the building next door, gray brick, anonymous. She thought about her grandmother, what the old woman would say about this. Probably something like, "You did what needed doing. Now you wait and see if the world is fair." The world was rarely fair. 2 hours later, Margaret knocked on Ruth's door. "Mr. Thompson wants to see you. His study." Ruth walked down the hallway. The door was open. Michael sat at his desk. The 2 police officers stood to the side. Barbara was there too, wheelchair positioned near the window. Michael's face was unreadable. "The officers have reviewed the evidence on your phone. They've also spoken with my mother at length. They've informed Ms. Martinez that they're opening an investigation into elder abuse. She's been asked to stay away from this residence pending the investigation." Ruth's chest loosened slightly. "However," Michael's voice hardened, "you still committed assault. Ms. Martinez is pressing charges. You'll likely be arrested within 24 hours. I've contacted an attorney. He'll represent you." "I can't afford—" "I'm paying for it. You did what I should have done 4 months ago." The female officer stepped forward. "Ms. Okonkwo, you're not under arrest at this time, but you should expect charges to be filed. Assault in the 3rd degree most likely. Given the circumstances and the evidence of provocation, the DA might reduce or dismiss, but we can't guarantee that. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Do you have somewhere else to stay, in case immigration flags your visa?" Ruth thought about the $340 in her bank account, the shared apartment in Queens she'd left 4 months ago, the cousin who might let her sleep on a couch if Ruth begged. "I'll figure it out," Michael cut in. "She stays here. She's still employed. Unless immigration physically removes her, she stays." The officers left. Barbara wheeled herself closer to Ruth. "Thank you." Her voice was quiet, shaking. "I should have fought for myself. I should have told Michael the first time. But I was scared and you weren't, and now you're going to lose everything because of me." Ruth knelt beside the wheelchair. "I'm not losing anything I didn't choose to risk." Barbara's eyes filled. She reached out, took Ruth's hand, held it like holding onto something solid in an earthquake. Michael cleared his throat. I'm going to review the security footage. All of it. Every camera in this penthouse. If there's more evidence of what Jessica did, I'll find it. He looked at Ruth. Why didn't you tell me you'd repositioned the camera in my mother's room? You didn't believe me the first time I reported. I needed proof you couldn't ignore. Something crossed his face. Shame, maybe. Shame. I was wrong. I should have looked. I should have checked. I should have trusted that my mother wasn't declining. She was being destroyed. His voice cracked on the last word. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for that. Starting now. He opened his laptop. This might take a while. Ruth and Barbara left him there. Ruth wheeled Barbara back to her room. The broken glasses were gone. Someone had cleaned them up. A new pair sat on the desk, identical frames. Michael must have called an optometrist, had them rushed over. Ruth helped Barbara into bed even though it was only 6 p.m. I'm not tired, but I can't sit in that chair anymore today. Ruth understood. The wheelchair had become a trap for 4 months. Sometimes you needed distance from the thing that held you. She brought dinner to Barbara on a tray, soup, bread, tea. Barbara ate half. Ruth sat in the chair by the window. Neither of them talked much. Outside, the river turned orange under the sunset, then purple, then black. At 11 p.m., Ruth's phone buzzed. The police had returned it. A text from a number she didn't recognize. You'll regret this. I have lawyers. I have money. You have nothing. Ruth deleted it, then thought better of it. Took a screenshot. Sent it to the email address Michael's attorney had given her. She tried to sleep but couldn't. Every sound in the hallway made her think immigration was coming. Every siren outside made her think about jail cells and deportation and never seeing her grandmother's grave again. At 2 a.m. she gave up, went to the kitchen, made tea, found Michael there, laptop open, headphones on. He pulled them off when he saw her. Can't sleep either? No, sir. Stop calling me sir. You hit my fiancée for my mother. We're past formalities. Ruth poured her tea. Michael gestured at the chair across from him. I've been watching 4 months of footage. Want to know what I've seen? Ruth sat. Michael turned the laptop around. The screen showed Barbara's room from above. The angle Ruth had adjusted. Barbara was in the wheelchair. Jessica stood behind her, hand on Barbara's shoulder. The image looked innocent. Then Jessica's fingers dug in. Barbara's face tightened. Jessica leaned down, whispered something. The audio was off, but Ruth could read Jessica's lips. Don't test me. Michael clicked to another clip. Jessica entering Barbara's room with a glass of water, setting it on the far table, out of Barbara's reach. Leaving. Barbara staring at the water for 3 hours, unable to get it herself, too proud to call for help. Another clip. Jessica turning Barbara's wheelchair to face the wall, walking out. Barbara sitting there, motionless, for the entire afternoon. When Ruth came in later, the timestamp showed 5 hours had passed. Another clip. The glasses scene. Jessica opening the drawer, placing the glasses inside, closing it. Barbara calling for them minutes later, voice confused, scared. Jessica returning, pretending to search, saying she couldn't find them anywhere. Michael's voice was hoarse. There's 47 clips. I've watched 30. Every single one shows systematic torture of a paralyzed woman, and I lived here. I walked past that room every day. I didn't see it. You weren't looking. I should have been. He closed the laptop. Jessica had access to my mother's medical records. She was the one who suggested Dr. Harris. She was the one who kept saying my mother was declining. And I believed her because it was easier than believing my mother was being abused in my own home. Ruth drank her tea. It was too hot, but she drank it anyway. The trust fund. Your mother mentioned Jessica wanted her declared incompetent. Michael nodded. The Thompson Family Trust. 51% of my company. It transfers to me if my mother dies or if she's legally declared incapable of managing her affairs. Jessica knew that. Her father is a probate attorney. She understood exactly how it worked. How long have you been engaged? 2 years. We were supposed to marry next month. He laughed, bitter. I thought she loved my mother. She visited every day, brought flowers, took photos for Instagram, called her the most inspiring woman I know. It was all performance. The best liars tell the truth around the edges, makes the center lie invisible. Michael looked at her. Your grandmother teach you that? My uncle, the one who was like Okonkwo, brave and stupid. He lied to everyone about everything except the one truth that mattered. He loved his family. So when he lied about other things, people believed him. What happened to him? Hanged himself when he couldn't pay his debts, left his family with nothing except the truth that he'd loved them. Didn't spend much. Michael was quiet. Then, I'm releasing all the footage to the police tomorrow. Jessica's attorney called, wants to make a deal. Drop the assault charges against you. Jessica leaves quietly. No elder abuse prosecution. I told them no. Ruth's eyebrows rose. You told them no? I told them my mother decides. Not me, not Jessica's lawyers. If my mother wants to prosecute, we prosecute. If she wants Jessica in prison, I'll make sure she gets there. And the assault charge against me? The DA saw the footage, saw Jessica slap my mother, saw the broken glasses. They're not filing charges. Self-defense of a third party. You're clear. The relief hit Ruth like a wave. She set down her tea before her hands started shaking. Immigration? Your visa is valid. Your work authorization is current. Nothing's changed on that front. You're safe. Ruth let out a breath she'd been holding for 18 hours. Michael stood, stretched. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be worse. He was right. Jessica's lawyers called at 9 a.m., then her publicist, then her father, all demanding the footage be sealed. The investigation dropped. A settlement reached quietly. Michael told them all the same thing. Talk to Barbara. At 11 a.m., Jessica showed up at the building. Security stopped her in the lobby. She demanded to see Michael. He went down. Ruth watched from the window 43 floors up. Couldn't hear the words but could see Jessica's face, red and furious. Could see Michael's back, rigid and unmoved. Could see Jessica slap him across the face. Could see building security grab her arms. Could see her being escorted out while she screamed something Ruth couldn't make out. Michael came back up 10 minutes later, red mark on his cheek, phone in hand. She just committed assault in front of 6 witnesses and 2 security cameras. Anything she had to negotiate with is gone. By noon, it hit the news. Not major outlets, but gossip sites, society pages, billionaire's fiancé accused of elder abuse. Lifestyle influencer Jessica Martinez under investigation. The photos were old, from Jessica's Instagram. Barbara and Jessica smiling together, Barbara in her wheelchair, Jessica kneeling beside her, both looking at the camera. The caption Jessica had written, "My beautiful mother-in-law teaches me about strength every day." The comments section filled fast, half defending Jessica, saying it was impossible, she was too kind, too loving, half calling for her arrest. A few mentioned Ruth, the African maid who stood up to her. Most ignored Ruth completely. This was about a white woman's fall, not about who pushed her. Michael's attorney called at 2 p.m. The DA wanted to meet. Barbara, Michael, and Ruth. Downtown, tomorrow morning. That night, Ruth cooked jollof rice even though it wasn't Tuesday. Barbara needed something normal, something that tasted like the past 4 months hadn't been wasted. Ruth brought it to her room. Barbara was staring out the window. I've been thinking about the first time you made this. You didn't ask permission, just cooked it and brought it to me like you knew I needed it. You looked hungry, not for food, for something that tasted like someone cared. Barbara turned her wheelchair to face Ruth. Jessica's father called me, offered me $2 million to drop the investigation. Said his daughter made mistakes but doesn't deserve to have her life ruined. What did you say? I asked him if he thought my life was worth $2 million. He didn't answer. I told him my life was worth more than his daughter's entire trust fund. Then I hung up. Ruth set the bowl down. Are you going to prosecute? I don't know. Part of me wants to watch her go to prison. Part of me just wants her gone, erased, like she tried to erase me. But mostly I'm tired. I'm 71 years old. I've spent 3 years being invisible. I want to be visible again. I don't know if a trial does that or if it just makes me the victim forever. Ruth sat in the chair by the window. My grandmother used to say, justice and revenge look the same from far away. You only know which one you're holding when you're close enough to see your reflection in it. Which one am I holding? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you what I see. I see a woman who's been silent for 3 years getting ready to speak. Whether that's in a courtroom or a press conference or just to her son doesn't matter. What matters is she's speaking. Barbara ate the jollof rice slowly. When she finished, she handed the bowl back to Ruth. I'm speaking. Tell Michael to set up a press conference. The attorney tried to talk her out of it. Press conferences were risky. Barbara wasn't trained to handle hostile questions. The footage spoke for itself. Better to release it through official channels, let the DA prosecute, stay out of the media circus. Barbara refused. I've been a professor for 30 years. I know how to handle hostile questions. Set it up. They scheduled it for Thursday, 3 days away. Michael's PR team wrote talking points. Barbara threw them away. I'm not reading a script, I'm telling the truth. Ruth helped her prepare. They practiced in Barbara's room. Ruth asked the question she thought reporters would ask. How long had the abuse been going on? Why didn't you report it sooner? Are you doing this for money? For revenge? How do you respond to people who say you're just a bitter ex-future mother-in-law? Barbara answered each one. Her voice got stronger with each practice session. By Wednesday night, she didn't hesitate anymore. Thursday morning, Ruth braided Barbara's hair. Same pattern as always. Small cornrows, tight even. Barbara wore a navy dress, pearls, the new glasses. She looked exactly like what she was, a professor who'd been silent too long and was done being quiet. The press conference was held at Michael's attorney's office, a conference room with 20 chairs, all filled. Cameras in the back, reporters with notebooks in the front. Ruth stood to the side, out of frame. Michael sat at the table next to his mother. Barbara wheeled herself to the microphone, adjusted it down to her height. My name is Barbara Thompson. I taught American literature at Columbia University for 30 years. I am not confused. I am not declining. I am a woman in a wheelchair who was told to be silent or lose everything. Her voice didn't shake. Today, I choose to speak. She told them everything. The threats, the hidden glasses, the wheelchair facing the wall, the slap. She didn't cry, didn't perform emotion, just stated facts the way she used to lecture, clear, precise, unarguable. Jessica Martinez spent 4 months trying to erase me, not kill me, erase me, make me incompetent on paper so she could take what belonged to me. And she almost succeeded because I was afraid. I was afraid my own stepson wouldn't believe me. I was afraid the world would see a disabled woman making accusations against a beautiful, successful woman and decide I was the problem. A reporter raised her hand. What changed? Barbara looked at Ruth. Someone fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. The cameras turned. Ruth kept her face neutral. She didn't want to be part of this story. This was Barbara's moment, but Barbara wasn't done. Ruth Okonkwo, my caregiver, documented 4 months of abuse. She reported it to my stepson. When he didn't believe her, she didn't quit. She collected evidence. She repositioned security cameras. She built a case because she knew I was being destroyed and no one else was looking. Barbara's voice strengthened. On Wednesday, Jessica Martinez slapped me across the face. Ruth walked in and stopped her. Ruth was arrested for assault. The charges were dropped yesterday because what she did wasn't assault. It was protection. And I wish I'd had the strength to protect myself, but I didn't. So I'm grateful someone did. Questions came fast after that. Barbara answered them all. Yes, she was considering a lawsuit. Yes, she wanted criminal prosecution. No, she didn't want money from Jessica. She wanted accountability. A reporter in the back called out, "What do you say to people who think this is just a family dispute being aired publicly for attention?" Barbara's eyes went cold. I say elder abuse happens in families. It happens in expensive penthouses and cheap apartments. It happens to people with money and people without. The only difference is some of us have security cameras and some of us don't. But the abuse is the same, and the silence is the same. And if me speaking publicly makes one person recognize what's happening to them or someone they love, then it's worth every uncomfortable question you want to ask me. The press conference ended. The footage went viral within an hour. Not Jessica's Instagram this time. Barbara's face, Barbara's voice, Barbara's spine straight in that wheelchair, speaking truth like a lecture she'd given 1,000 times. The response was immediate. Other caregivers started coming forward. A woman in Boston whose employer's daughter had been stealing her medication. A man in Chicago whose client's son had been forging checks. A woman in Miami whose patient's nephew had been threatening deportation if she reported the bruises. Ruth's phone filled with messages from numbers she didn't recognize. People saying thank you, people saying I see you, people saying you saved more than one person. But Jessica's response was faster. Her attorney released a statement at 6 p.m. Jessica was devastated by the allegations. She loved Barbara like family. The so-called evidence was taken out of context. The slap was an accident, a moment of frustration after months of verbal abuse from Barbara. Ruth had attacked Jessica unprovoked. The whole thing was a conspiracy to ruin Jessica's reputation and her business. The statement included details about Ruth, her visa status, her salary, implications that Ruth had financial motivation to lie, that she wanted a green card, that she'd manipulated Barbara into making accusations. Ruth read it on her phone, felt the familiar weight of being reduced to nothing. The African maid with an agenda, the immigrant who couldn't be trusted, the lie that was easier to believe than the truth. Margaret knocked on her door at 7 p.m. "You have visitors. Lobby." Ruth went down. 3 women waited. Late 20s to early 40s, different races, similar exhausted faces. Caregivers. The oldest one spoke first. "We saw the press conference. We work in buildings like this. We see things like what happened to Mrs. Thompson. We wanted to say we believe you." The second one held out a phone. "Jessica Martinez's Instagram. Look at the comments." Ruth scrolled. Thousands of comments. Most supportive of Jessica at first, but then, buried in the threads, caregivers speaking up, posting their own stories, posting photos of injuries their clients had that families ignored, posting text messages from employers' relatives threatening them if they reported abuse. The third woman looked at Ruth directly. "You did something most of us can't do. You had evidence. You had a boss who believed you eventually. You had a chance to fight back. Most of us don't get that. So we're here to say, keep fighting. For all of us." They left. Ruth went back upstairs, found Michael in his study, laptop open, scrolling through something. "You see the statement Jessica's lawyer put out?" "Yes. We're responding tomorrow. Full release of the security footage, all 47 clips, unedited. Let the world see exactly what she did." Ruth's stomach tightened. "That footage shows Barbara at her most vulnerable. Are you sure she wants that public?" I asked her. She said yes. She said vulnerability isn't weakness. It's just truth. And she's done hiding truth. The footage went public Friday morning. Major news outlets picked it up by noon. The clips were damning. Jessica's face, cold and calculated. Barbara's face, scared and small. The whispered threats audible now that audio was included. The stepping on fingers. The hidden glasses. The wheelchair facing the wall. Public opinion shifted fast. Jessica's Instagram comments turned vicious. Her business partnerships started pulling out. Her father's law firm released a statement distancing themselves from her actions. By Friday evening, Jessica's attorney called. Jessica wanted to settle, would agree to stay away from Barbara permanently, would pay restitution, would not contest a restraining order. In exchange, Barbara wouldn't pursue criminal charges. Michael brought the offer to his mother. Barbara sat in her wheelchair by the window, looking at the river. "What do you think I should do?" "I think you should do whatever lets you sleep at night." She was quiet for a long time. "I want her to know what it feels like." to be erased. To have everyone see what you really are and decide you're worthless. I want her to feel that. She already does. Her face is all over the news. Her business is gone. Her reputation is destroyed. She's living what she tried to make you live. Barbara turned to look at Michael. Is that enough? Only you can answer that. Barbara looked at Ruth. What would your grandmother do? Ruth thought about it. Her grandmother, who lived 61 years with paralyzed legs in a country that treated disabled people like burdens, who never got justice for anything, who died in pain, quietly, asking Ruth not to cry too loud because it would bother the neighbors. My grandmother would say, "Don't give her any more of your time. She already took 4 months. Don't give her 4 more years fighting in court." Barbara nodded slowly. Tell them I accept, with conditions. Jessica pays for a foundation. Elder Care Advocacy. Ruth runs it. Ruth's head snapped up. What? You documented everything because you knew what to look for. You knew the signs. You knew how to build a case. Other caregivers need to know that too. Jessica's settlement money pays for it. You teach them. Michael looked at Ruth. Would you do that? Ruth's throat was tight. I'm a caregiver, not a... You're a caregiver who saved someone's life by knowing exactly what evidence to collect and how to collect it. That's expertise. Share it. Ruth didn't know what to say. She'd come to Manhattan with 1 suitcase and a work visa to take care of 1 woman, and now that woman was asking her to take care of thousands. I'll think about it. Think fast. We sign the settlement Monday. The weekend passed in a blur. News crews camped outside the building. Ruth stayed inside, cooked, cleaned, braided Barbara's hair again, even though it didn't need it. Needed something to do with her hands that wasn't answering reporters' calls. Sunday afternoon, Barbara asked Ruth to take her to the rooftop garden, the place Jessica had left her by the railing. Ruth hesitated. Are you sure? I can't let that space belong to her fear anymore. I need to take it back. They went up. The garden was empty. Ruth wheeled Barbara to a bench far from the railing, sat beside her. The city spread out below them. Endless buildings, endless windows, endless lives happening behind glass. I've been thinking about what you said, about justice and revenge looking the same from far away. Barbara's hands rested in her lap, still for once. I think I'm holding justice, because I'm not trying to hurt Jessica. I'm trying to make sure she can't hurt anyone else. That's different. Yes. And I'm trying to make something good come from something terrible. The foundation. Teaching caregivers how to protect their clients. That's justice too. Ruth nodded. But I need to know you'll actually do it. Run the foundation. Teach others. Because if you won't, then I'm just giving Jessica money to make myself feel better. And that's not justice. That's just expensive therapy. Ruth looked at Barbara, this woman who'd been compressed for 3 years and was finally expanding back to her full size. I'll do it. Why? Because my grandmother taught me what to look for. And she's dead. But there are grandmothers out there right now being hurt by people they trust. And their granddaughters don't know what to look for. Someone needs to teach them. Barbara reached over, took Ruth's hand. You're going to change lives. I already did. I changed yours. You saved mine. That's different. Now you're going to change others. Make them safer. Make them braver. Make them know they're not alone. They sat there until the sun started setting. Then Ruth wheeled Barbara back inside, past the spot by the railing, past the fear, into the elevator that took them home. Monday morning they signed the settlement. Jessica agreed to pay $5 million to establish the Thompson Foundation for Elder Care Advocacy. Ruth would serve as director. The foundation would provide training for caregivers on recognizing abuse, documenting evidence, and reporting safely. Jessica would stay away from Barbara permanently. Criminal charges would not be filed. Jessica's signature on the document was barely legible. Her hand shook. She didn't look at Barbara once. Barbara's signature was clear and steady. They left the attorney's office, Cameras waited outside. Questions shouted from every direction. Michael's security pushed through, but Barbara raised her hand. One statement. The crowd quieted. 4 months ago, I was being erased by someone I trusted. Today, I'm using what happened to me to make sure it doesn't happen to others. That's not revenge, that's responsibility. And I'm grateful to the woman who taught me the difference. She looked at Ruth. Ruth Okonkwo came to this country with nothing but her grandmother's wisdom and her own courage. She saved my life. Now she's going to save others. If you want a story, that's your story. Not me, her. The cameras turned. Ruth wanted to disappear, but Barbara was right. This wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about being visible, about showing other caregivers they could fight back and survive. She spoke, voice steady. My name is Ruth Okonkwo. I'm 27 years old. I came from Nigeria to care for Mrs. Thompson. When I saw she was being hurt, I documented it. When I reported it and wasn't believed, I kept documenting. When I saw her being attacked, I stopped it. I'm not a hero. I'm a caregiver who did her job. And starting next month, I'm going to teach other caregivers how to do the same. The questions came fast. She answered them. Where she was from, how she learned to recognize abuse, what she wanted other caregivers to know. She didn't smile, didn't perform, just told the truth the way Barbara had taught her. Clear, precise, unarguable. They went home. Ruth made jollof rice even though it was Monday. Barbara ate 2 bowls. They argued about Toni Morrison until midnight. Outside, the river turned black and the city kept moving. And somewhere in a million windows, caregivers watched the news and thought, maybe I can do that too. Tuesday morning, Ruth's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. A woman's voice shaking. Is this Ruth, the woman from the press conference? Yes. I'm a caregiver in Brooklyn. I've been watching my client get hurt by her son for 8 months. I didn't know what to do. I saw you on TV. You said you documented everything. Can you teach me how? Ruth looked at Barbara, who was watching from her wheelchair. Yes, I can teach you. She took down the woman's information, promised to call back with details about the Foundation's first training session. When she hung up, Barbara was smiling. It's starting. What is? The thing we're building. The thing that matters more than revenge or justice or any of it. We're building a network. Women who won't be silent, women who know what to look for, women who fight back. Ruth sat down. I came here to take care of one person. You still are. You're just expanding the definition of who that person is. The phone rang again. Another caregiver, then another. By the end of the day, Ruth had 17 names. 17 people who wanted to learn. 17 people who'd been silent and were ready to speak. That night, Ruth lay in bed and thought about her grandmother. What she'd say about all this? Probably something like, your hands were always meant for more than just lifting. They were meant for building. Wednesday, Michael's assistant came to Ruth's room. Mr. Thompson would like to see you, his study. Ruth went. Michael sat at his desk, papers spread everywhere. I've been reviewing my mother's care for the past 3 years. Before you. 4 caregivers, all quit within 6 months. I thought it was my mother being difficult. I was wrong. He pulled out a file. The 3rd caregiver, Maria Santos, filed a complaint with an elder care hotline. Said my mother was being isolated, that Jessica was restricting access. The hotline contacted me. I dismissed it. Told them Maria was disgruntled, had been fired for poor performance. His voice was hollow. I lied to protect Jessica. And Maria was deported 3 months later for an unrelated visa issue. She tried to help my mother and I destroyed her for it. Ruth didn't know what to say. I'm trying to find her, make it right, but I can't find any record of where she went after deportation. She just disappeared. He looked at Ruth. I tell you this because I need you to know. You're not the first person who tried to save my mother. You're the first person I believed, and I'm sorry it took me so long. You believed your mother in the end. That's what matters. Is it? Maria's gone, probably back in the Philippines, probably can't ever come back here, probably tells everyone she meets that reporting abuse gets you destroyed. How many other caregivers has she told to stay silent because speaking up cost her everything? Ruth sat down. You can't fix the past. You can only change what happens next. That's what the foundation is for? Part of it. But part of it is also you. How you respond next time someone reports abuse. How you teach other families to listen. How you stop being the person who dismisses complaints and start being the person who investigates them. Michael nodded slowly. Will you help me with that? That's not my job. No. But it could be. The foundation needs a board. People who understand what went wrong and how to fix it. I want to be on that board. I want to learn from people like Maria and you and everyone else I failed. Will you let me? Ruth thought about it. About power and privilege and wealthy men who wanted to learn after the damage was done. About whether redemption was possible or just another form of absolution. Yes. But I'm in charge. Not you. Not any other family member. Caregivers run this foundation. People who've lived it. You can advise. You can fund. You can't control. Agreed. They shook hands. Ruth went back to her room, found Barbara there, waiting. I heard. You're taking charge. Someone has to. I'm proud of you. The words hit Ruth unexpectedly hard. Her grandmother had never said that, too busy surviving to celebrate. But Barbara said it like it was easy, like pride was something you gave freely. Thank you. Don't thank me, you earned it. Now come read to me. We're starting Alice Walker. They read until dinner, then ate together, then argued about whether Celie was stronger than Okonkwo until Barbara's eyes started closing. Ruth helped her into bed, turned off the lights, closed the door softly. In the hallway she paused. 4 months ago she'd walked this same hallway carrying a suitcase, not knowing if she'd last a week. Now she walked it carrying the weight of 17 caregivers who wanted to learn, one foundation that needed building, and one woman whose life she'd saved by refusing to be silent. Her grandmother was right. Her hands were always meant for more than lifting. They were meant for fighting. 3 weeks after the settlement, Ruth sat in a conference room in Midtown Manhattan, looking at faces that mirrored her own exhaustion. 12 caregivers, mostly women, mostly immigrants, all carrying stories they'd never been allowed to tell. The Thompson Foundation's first training session. Ruth had spent those 3 weeks preparing, building curriculum, researching laws, consulting with elder abuse attorneys about what documentation actually mattered in court. She stood at the front of the room. My name is Ruth Okonkwo. 4 months ago I watched someone abuse the woman I was hired to protect. I documented it, I reported it, I fought back. Today I'm going to teach you how to do the same without losing your job, your visa, or your life. A woman in the back raised her hand. Filipina, maybe 50, tired eyes. What if we already reported and nothing happened? Then you learn what evidence actually works. What I brought to my employer the first time wasn't enough. He didn't believe me, so I learned what he needed to see. Today you learn that too. Ruth opened her laptop, projected the first slide. Types of elder abuse: physical, emotional, financial, neglect, isolation. She went through each one with examples from Barbara's case. Didn't sugarcoat it. Showed the photos of bruises, played the audio of threats, explained how she'd documented timestamps, patterns, escalation. A younger woman, maybe 25, Haitian accent, interrupted. You had a boss who eventually believed you. Mine won't. Ever. His mother could be bleeding and he'd say she fell. What then? Then you build a case strong enough that he can't ignore it. Or you go over his head. Elder abuse hotlines, adult protective services, police if necessary, but you need evidence first. Without it, you're just an immigrant making accusations against a citizen. We lose that fight every time. Heads nodded around the room. They understood the reality Ruth was naming. In America, their word meant nothing without proof. She spent 2 hours teaching them How to photograph injuries without the client knowing they're being documented, in case the abuser finds out. How to record conversations legally. One-party consent states versus two-party states. How to keep logs that would hold up in court. Dates, times, witness names, exact quotes. How to spot financial abuse. Forged signatures, missing belongings, sudden changes in bank accounts. By the end, every person in that room had a folder. Template forms for documentation. Contact information for legal aid organizations. A private phone number that went directly to Ruth no matter what time if they needed help. The Filipina woman from earlier stayed after. I've been working for the same family 8 years. The daughter steals from her mother. Jewelry, cash, anything valuable. The mother knows but won't say anything because the daughter is all she has. What do I do? Ruth sat down across from her. You document what you see. You keep a record. And when the mother is ready to speak, you have evidence to back her up. That's all you can do. You can't force someone to save themselves, but you can be ready when they decide to. The woman's eyes filled. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was going crazy, seeing things that no one else cared about. You're not crazy. You're awake. And now you know you're not alone. Ruth gave her the folder, watched her leave, felt the weight of what she'd just started. This wasn't one person anymore. This was a movement. By the end of the first month, Ruth had trained 47 caregivers. Word spread through networks immigrants built in cities, churches, community centers, grocery stores where people spoke languages employers didn't understand. Ruth's phone never stopped. Calls from Boston, Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles. Caregivers who'd seen the press conference, found the foundation website, needed help. She couldn't train them all in person, so she built an online course. Video modules covering everything from the in-person training plus sections on cultural barriers, how to report abuse when you're undocumented, how to protect yourself from retaliation, how to find attorneys who work pro bono for immigrant workers. Michael funded it without question. The foundation grew faster than Ruth had planned. By month 2, they had a small office in Manhattan. By month 3, a full-time staff, a lawyer, a social worker, a victim advocate. Ruth hired the Haitian woman from the first training session. Her name was Nadine. She'd reported her employer to APS 2 weeks after the training. Her employer's son was now under investigation for financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Nadine had lost her job but gained something more valuable. Proof that speaking up didn't always end in deportation. Barbara came to the office once a week. Not as a client, as a teacher. She ran a session for caregivers on how to recognize when someone was being isolated. How to spot the signs in conversation, body language, environmental control. She taught it like a literature class, close reading of human behavior. When someone is being isolated, they stop using plural pronouns. They say I instead of we. They stop mentioning friends, family, activities outside the home. They become grammatically singular. Pay attention to language. It tells you everything. The caregivers listened like students at Columbia had once listened. Barbara had found her classroom again, just a different subject. One afternoon, after Barbara's session, Ruth drove her back to the penthouse. They stopped at a red light on Fifth Avenue. Barbara stared out the window. Do you regret it? Ruth didn't need clarification. Hitting Jessica? No. Not that, this, the foundation, the responsibility. You could have just stayed my caregiver, cooked jollof rice on Tuesdays, read to me in the afternoons. Instead, you're running an organization, training dozens of people, carrying weight that isn't yours. The light turned green. Ruth drove. My grandmother carried weight that wasn't hers for 61 years, raised 6 kids, worked 3 jobs, took care of a husband who drank, and a mother-in-law who blamed her for everything. She died exhausted. I used to think that was tragic. Now I think it was purposeful. She carried weight so I wouldn't have to, so I could choose what weight to carry instead of having it forced on me. This is my choice. That's the difference. Barbara was quiet for a block. Your grandmother would be proud. She'd say I'm showing off. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Ruth smiled. Barbara's phrases were becoming hers. They'd been living in each other's language for 6 months. When they got back to the penthouse, Margaret met them at the elevator. "Miss Martinez is downstairs." Building security stopped her, but she's insisting she needs to see Mrs. Thompson. Something about a letter. Barbara's face went cold. "Tell security I'm not seeing her. If she has a letter, she can mail it." "She says it's urgent, about the settlement." Ruth and Barbara exchanged looks. The settlement was final. Signed. Legal. There was nothing urgent Jessica could claim unless she was trying to renegotiate. Michael came out of his study. "I'll handle it." He went downstairs, came back 15 minutes later with an envelope, opened it at the dining table, read the contents. His jaw clenched. "She's suing you for defamation." Barbara didn't react. "On what grounds?" "The press conference. She claims you made false statements about her character that damaged her reputation and business. She's seeking $10 million in damages." Ruth's stomach dropped. Barbara's voice stayed level. "Every statement I made was backed by video evidence." Her attorney argues the video was edited to make her look worse than she was, that you orchestrated a public smear campaign because you were angry about the engagement ending. The engagement ended because she was abusing me. I know that. The court knows that. But she's filing anyway. Her attorney thinks a jury might be sympathetic. Beautiful young woman whose life was destroyed by allegations, even if those allegations were proven true. They'll argue you took it too far, made it too public, ruined her beyond what the abuse warranted. Barbara sat down at the table. For the first time since the slap, she looked small again. Ruth's hands clenched. "This is retaliation." She signed a settlement agreeing not to pursue legal action. The settlement covered criminal prosecution. It didn't explicitly bar civil suits. My attorney missed it. Michael's voice was bitter. Jessica's attorney didn't. Ruth looked at Barbara. "What do you want to do?" "I want to finish what I started. If she wants to take me to court, we go to court. I'll say everything again under oath. The jury can decide who's telling the truth." Michael shook his head. "A trial would take years, cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees, drag you through depositions, cross-examinations, media coverage. It would consume your life." "She already consumed 4 months of my life. What's a few years if it means she can't do this to someone else?" Ruth cut in. "If you fight this, it doesn't just affect you. It affects the foundation. Every caregiver we've trained, every person who came forward because they believed speaking up was safe, they'll watch you get sued into oblivion for doing exactly what we taught them to do." Barbara looked at her. "Are you saying I should settle?" "I'm saying there's 2 kinds of winning, legal and practical. You can win in court and lose everywhere else. Or you can lose in court and win everywhere else. You need to decide which matters more." The room went quiet. Outside, the river reflected sunset orange. Inside, 3 people sat with the weight of a decision that would define what came next. Barbara spoke first. "What would losing everywhere else look like?" Ruth chose her words carefully. "It would look like caregivers seeing that even with evidence, even with support, even with money and lawyers, reporting abuse gets you sued. It would look like every person we trained deciding silence is safer. It would look like Jessica winning without ever stepping into a courtroom because she made you the cautionary tale. And winning everywhere else? Looks like you refusing to let her control your time anymore. Looks like you focusing on the foundation instead of litigation. Looks like 47 caregivers and counting who have jobs and evidence and the knowledge that they can fight back. Looks like you living your life instead of defending it." Barbara closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet but clear. "I'm not settling, but I'm not letting this consume me either. Michael, tell your attorney to file a motion to dismiss. If it gets dismissed, good. If it goes to trial, we fight it, but we don't let it stop anything. The foundation continues. The training continues. I continue. She doesn't get to take any more from me." Michael nodded. "I'll call him tonight." The motion to dismiss was denied. The case moved forward. Discovery started in September. Ruth watched Barbara sit through 6-hour depositions, answering the same questions over and over. Jessica's attorney was aggressive, tried to paint Barbara as a vindictive woman who couldn't accept her stepson's happiness, tried to suggest the abuse was exaggerated, that bruises came from normal wheelchair transfers, that isolation was Barbara's choice, not Jessica's doing. Barbara didn't break. She answered every question the same way she'd answered reporters, clear, precise, unarguable. But it cost her. Ruth saw it in the way Barbara's hands shook after depositions, the way she sat in her wheelchair staring at nothing for hours, the way she stopped reading, stopped arguing about books, stopped being the professor who'd come back to life over jollof rice and cornrows. One night in late September, Ruth found Barbara on the rooftop garden at midnight, the place Jessica had left her by the railing. Barbara went there sometimes now, reclaiming the space inch by inch. Ruth sat on the bench beside the wheelchair. "You don't have to keep doing this." "Yes, I do." "Why? What are you proving?" Barbara's voice came out raw. "I'm proving I'm not afraid anymore. I'm proving she didn't win. I'm proving that even if this trial destroys me, I chose to be destroyed fighting instead of destroyed staying silent. There's honor in that. There's also exhaustion. I've been exhausted for 3 years. At least now I'm exhausted for a reason." Ruth didn't argue, just sat there while the city noise rose up from 43 floors below and the October wind turned cold. The foundation kept growing despite the lawsuit. By November, Ruth had trained over 200 caregivers across 8 cities. The online course had been completed by 500 more. News outlets started picking up stories. Caregiver in Seattle who documented financial abuse, employer prosecuted, restitution paid. Caregiver in Atlanta who reported neglect, client moved to better care facility, family member lost guardianship. Caregiver in Denver who stopped physical abuse, evidence submitted to APS, investigation opened. Every story mentioned the Thompson Foundation. Every story mentioned Ruth. And every story mentioned Barbara, the woman whose refusal to stay silent had started it all. Jessica's attorney tried to use the foundation against Barbara in court, argued it was proof Barbara had financial motivation to make allegations. The foundation received donations, held fundraisers, paid Ruth's salary. Therefore, Barbara benefited from destroying Jessica's reputation. Barbara's attorney countered, the foundation was funded by Jessica's settlement money and operated at a loss. Barbara received no salary, no benefits, no financial gain whatsoever. Her only benefit was knowing other people wouldn't suffer what she'd suffered. The jury could decide if that was a sinister motive. The trial was set for March, 6 months away. Ruth watched Barbara prepare like a student cramming for finals, reviewing depositions, memorizing timelines, making sure every detail was perfect. Michael hired a trial consultant. They did mock cross-examinations, put Barbara through scenarios where Jessica's attorney would try to trap her in contradictions. Barbara never contradicted herself. Her memory was perfect. The professor's mind hadn't declined at all. It had just been suppressed. In December, Ruth took Barbara to the foundation's holiday party, a small gathering at the office. 30 caregivers who'd completed training, plus staff. Someone brought empanadas. Someone else brought lumpia. Someone brought jerk chicken. The food was a map of where everyone came from. The stories were a map of where they'd been. A woman from El Salvador stood up. Her name was Carmen. She'd been one of the first Ruth trained. "I want to say something. Before this foundation, I watched my client get hurt by her grandson for 2 years. I didn't report because I was scared. Then I saw Mrs. Thompson on TV and I thought, if she can speak, maybe I can speak. I took the training. I documented everything. Last month the grandson was arrested. My client is safe, and I still have my job because I knew what evidence to collect and how to protect myself. That's because of this foundation, because of Ruth, because of Mrs. Thompson. Thank you." Others spoke. Similar stories. Different details. Same core. They'd been silent until someone showed them how to be loud safely. Barbara listened to all of it. At the end, she wheeled herself to the front. "I was silent for 3 years, not because I wanted to be, because I thought silence was the only way to survive. I was wrong. Silence wasn't survival. It was slow death. Speaking up was survival, even when it was hard, even when people didn't believe me, even when it cost me everything, because at least when you speak, you're still yourself. Silence makes you into what other people want you to be, and I'm done being what other people want. The room erupted in applause. Ruth saw tears on faces around the room, saw people holding each other, saw the weight of years of silence breaking apart into something that looked like hope. After the party, Ruth drove Barbara home. They didn't talk, didn't need to. The silence between them was the good kind, the kind that came from understanding. When they got to the penthouse, Barbara stopped Ruth at the elevator. "If I lose the trial, the foundation survives. Promise me that." "You're not going to lose." "Promise me anyway." Ruth looked at this woman who'd become more than an employer, more than a client, more than a friend. Had become a mirror showing Ruth who she could be if she refused to be small. "I promise." January brought news. Jessica's business had collapsed completely. No partnerships, no sponsors, no Instagram followers who weren't there to hate watch. She'd moved back to her parents' house in Connecticut. Her father's law firm had quietly pushed her out. She had nothing left except the lawsuit. Michael's attorney suggested settlement again. Offered Jessica a deal. Drop the suit, keep the original settlement money, walk away clean. Jessica refused. She wanted the $10 million, wanted vindication, wanted Barbara to admit she'd lied. Barbara wouldn't admit to something that wasn't true. February. Final depositions. Jessica sat across from Barbara in a conference room, their first time in the same space since the slap. Jessica looked different, thinner, older. Her perfect hair had dark roots. Her perfect skin had lines. She looked like what she was, someone who'd lost everything and was holding on to rage to avoid falling apart completely. Barbara looked at her without emotion. Jessica's attorney asked the questions. "Mrs. Thompson, did you love my client like a daughter before these allegations?" "No." "No? But you appeared in multiple Instagram posts expressing affection for her. Appearing in someone's photos isn't the same as loving them. I was polite. She was engaged to my stepson. Politeness is not love." "Did you resent her relationship with your stepson?" "I resented what she did to me. The relationship was irrelevant." "Isn't it true that you wanted your stepson to marry someone else? Someone you approved of?" "I wanted my stepson to marry someone who didn't abuse me. That's a low bar." "You call it abuse. My client calls it caregiving. She helped you, visited you daily, brought you gifts, showed you affection on social media. How is that abuse?" Barbara leaned forward in her wheelchair. She hid my glasses so I couldn't read. She turned my wheelchair to face the wall so I couldn't see outside. She stepped on my fingers with her heel. She slapped me hard enough to knock my glasses off. She threatened to have me declared incompetent and locked in a facility. All of that is on video. Your client can call it whatever she wants. The evidence calls it abuse. Jessica's attorney shuffled papers. "Let's talk about the foundation. You benefit financially from maintaining these allegations, don't you?" "The foundation pays me nothing." "But it pays your caregiver, Ms. Okonkwo, who is also your friend, who attacked my client. You benefit from protecting her employment." Barbara's voice went cold. "Ruth Okonkwo protected me when no one else would. The foundation exists because she showed other caregivers how to do the same. If that's a benefit, I'll take it. But it's not financial. It's moral. Something your client might not understand." The deposition ended. Jessica left without looking at Barbara. Her attorney looked frustrated. The video evidence was too strong, the timeline too clear. The case was weak and everyone knew it. But weak cases still went to trial, and trials still destroyed people. March arrived. The trial started on a Monday. Ruth sat in the courtroom every day, Michael beside her. Margaret came when she could. The caregivers Ruth had trained took shifts, filling the gallery, showing Barbara she had an army. Jessica's attorney opened with sympathy. A young woman whose only crime was loving an older woman, who couldn't accept her. A young woman whose business was destroyed, whose reputation was ruined, whose life was shattered by allegations that were technically true but wildly exaggerated. Yes, Jessica slapped Barbara once. Once. In 4 months. One moment of frustration after months of verbal abuse Barbara conveniently didn't mention. Did that one slap deserve a public execution? Barbara's attorney countered with evidence. 47 video clips, audio recordings, medical documentation, testimony from Ruth about what she'd witnessed, testimony from Margaret about changes in Barbara's behavior, testimony from Dr. Harris admitting Jessica had coached him on what to write in his evaluation. The jury watched it all. 12 faces, impossible to read. Jessica testified on day 4. She cried on the stand, said she'd loved Barbara, tried to help her, couldn't understand why Barbara turned against her. Admitted to the slap, but called it an accident. Admitted to hiding the glasses, but said she was trying to get Barbara to rest her eyes. Admitted to turning the wheelchair, but said the view was giving Barbara headaches. Every piece of abuse reframed as care. Her attorney asked, "Did you ever intend to hurt Mrs. Thompson?" Jessica's voice broke. "Never. I loved her." Barbara's attorney cross-examined. "You loved her, but you stepped on her fingers?" "That was an accident. I didn't see her hand there." "The video shows you looking directly at her hand before you stepped." "I don't remember it that way." "You loved her, but you threatened to put her in a facility?" "I was trying to help her understand her options for the future." "By telling her she'd die alone?" "I never said that." "We have a recording of you saying exactly that." Jessica's composure cracked. Tears stopped. Voice turned sharp. "She was declining. She needed professional care. I was trying to prepare her and she took it as a threat because she's paranoid." "Paranoid? Or accurately perceiving that you wanted her declared incompetent so your fiancé would inherit her trust fund?" Objection. Sustained. But the jury had heard it. The seed was planted. Barbara testified on day 6, wheeled herself to the witness stand, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Her attorney walked her through everything: the timeline, the abuse, the fear, the silence. Barbara's voice never wavered. She didn't cry, didn't perform emotion, just stated facts like presenting evidence in an academic paper. Jessica's attorney cross-examined on day 7, tried to rattle her, asked about her mental state, her medication, her memory, asked if she'd ever been diagnosed with dementia, paranoia, personality disorders, asked if she resented Jessica's youth, beauty, success. Barbara answered every question the same way, calmly, precisely, with references to specific dates and video timestamps. The attorney changed tactics. "Mrs. Thompson, you destroyed my client's life. Her business is gone. Her reputation is ruined. She's unemployable. Was that your goal?" Barbara didn't hesitate. "My goal was to stop being abused. If telling the truth about what she did resulted in consequences for her, that's not my responsibility. That's hers. You could have handled this privately." "I tried. I told my stepson. He didn't believe me. I had to go public because private channels failed." "You could have accepted the settlement and stayed quiet." "Staying quiet is what allowed the abuse to continue. I'm done staying quiet. If that makes me the villain in your client's story, I can live with that. Can she live with what she did to me?" The courtroom was silent. Jessica's attorney had no response. Closing arguments happened on day 9. Jessica's attorney painted her as a victim of a vindictive campaign. Barbara's attorney painted her as a survivor who refused to be silenced. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They came back with a verdict: not liable. Jessica's defamation claim was rejected. Barbara owed nothing. The abuse was real. The public statements were true. No defamation occurred. Jessica sat at the defendant's table and cried. Real tears this time, not performance, the grief of someone who'd lost everything and gained nothing. Barbara sat at the plaintiff's table and breathed. Just breathed. Like someone who'd been holding their breath for 9 months and could finally exhale. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Barbara made one statement. Justice isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about refusing to let someone rewrite your story. Jessica Martinez tried to erase me. She failed. That's my victory. Everything else is just paperwork. Ruth drove Barbara home. Michael followed in his own car. When they got to the penthouse, Barbara asked Ruth to take her to the rooftop, the place Jessica had left her by the railing, the place Barbara had been reclaiming inch by inch for 9 months. They went up. March wind was cold, but the sky was clear. The city stretched out in every direction, endless. Barbara wheeled herself to the railing, not 6 feet away like Jessica had left her, right up to it, looked down at the street 43 floors below. I used to be afraid of this view, thought if I got too close I'd fall, or someone would push me. Now I know the only person who can make me fall is me, and I'm not falling. She turned the wheelchair around, faced Ruth. I need to ask you something. The foundation is yours now, not mine. You built it. You run it. You're the face of it. I'm just the story that started it. Are you ready for that? Ruth had been thinking about this for months, what it meant to go from caregiver to director, from background to spotlight, from lifting one person to lifting hundreds. My grandmother spent her whole life lifting people, never got credit, never got thanks, just did the work and died tired. I used to think that was her tragedy. Now I think it was her choice. She could have demanded recognition. She didn't. She just did the work. That's what I'm doing. The foundation is the work. I don't need it to be mine. I just need it to exist. Barbara smiled. Then you're ready. They stayed on the rooftop until the sun set. Watched the city turn from gold to purple to black. Watched lights come on in a million windows. Watched people live their lives in spaces they thought were private, but were really just glass boxes everyone could see into if they looked hard enough. Ruth thought about all the caregivers in all those windows, working in homes where abuse happened behind closed doors, wondering if anyone would believe them if they spoke, wondering if speaking was worth the risk. The foundation was the answer to that wondering, not a guarantee that speaking up would be safe, just proof that it was possible, that some people did it and survived. That silence wasn't the only option. That night, Ruth cooked jollof rice. Tuesday, same as always. Brought it to Barbara's room at 9 p.m. They ate together in comfortable quiet. Then Barbara pulled out a book. Alice Walker, The Color Purple, Your Turn to Read. Ruth read aloud. The story of Celie, a woman who spent years being silent, then found her voice through letters no one was supposed to see. Found power in words even when those words weren't spoken out loud. When Ruth finished the first section, Barbara stopped her. Do you know why I wanted you to read this? Because it's about a woman finding her voice? Because it's about a woman who was told she was nothing and decided she was something. That's what you did for me. Reminded me I was something. And that's what the foundation does. Reminds people they're something even when the world treats them like nothing. Ruth closed the book. You were always something. You just forgot for a while. We all forget sometimes. That's why we need people like you. People who remember for us until we can remember for ourselves. The weeks after the trial were quieter. Barbara went back to teaching sessions at the foundation. Ruth expanded the training program to 12 cities. Michael joined the board officially, brought in other business leaders, turned the foundation into something that could outlast all of them. In April, Ruth got a call from Maria Santos, the third caregiver, the one who'd tried to report Jessica years ago and been deported for it. She'd seen the trial coverage in the Philippines, reached out through a caregiver network, wanted to know if Barbara was okay. Ruth put her on speaker. Barbara's voice shook when she answered. Maria, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what happened to you. I didn't know you'd tried to help me. Maria's voice came through the phone, calm despite everything. I'm okay. I have work here. I have family. I'm okay. I just wanted to know you got free. I did, because of someone like you. Someone who saw what was happening and tried to stop it. You were first. Ruth was second. But you were first. Then it wasn't for nothing. They talked for an hour. About the trial, the foundation, the hundreds of caregivers who now had training Maria never got. At the end, Maria said something that stayed with Ruth for years after. Tell them it's not about being brave. Brave is for heroes. We're not heroes. We're just people who can't watch someone suffer without trying to help. That's not brave. That's human. Tell them to be human. That's enough. Ruth told every caregiver after that. In training sessions, in one-on-one calls, in the video modules that reached people she'd never meet. She told them, you don't have to be brave, you just have to be human. See suffering, document it, report it. That's enough. By June, the foundation had trained over 1,000 caregivers. The online course had reached 5,000. News outlets stopped covering it as much. It became normal instead of novel, which meant it was working. Normal was the goal, making documentation and reporting so common that silence became the exception instead of the rule. Ruth moved out of the penthouse in July, not because she wanted to leave Barbara, because she needed space to build a life that wasn't defined by one person's need. She found an apartment in Brooklyn, small, affordable, hers. Still came to the penthouse every Tuesday for jollof rice and arguing about books. Still braided Barbara's hair every other week. Still called when she needed advice or just needed to hear someone who understood. Barbara understood. Encouraged it even. You're not my caregiver anymore. You're my friend. Friends don't live in service corridors. Michael started dating again in August. Not seriously. Just testing if he could trust his own judgment after Jessica. He asked Barbara's opinion on every woman he met. Barbara was brutally honest. Most of them didn't pass the test. The one who did was a public defender named Lauren Chen, who prosecuted elder abuse cases and didn't care about Michael's money. She met Barbara on the second date, argued with her about Toni Morrison. Barbara approved. She's not afraid of me. That's rare. Keep her. By September, Ruth was traveling constantly. Training sessions in Portland, Seattle, Phoenix, Dallas, Miami. Every city had caregivers who needed what she'd learned the hard way. Every city had someone who'd been silent and was ready to speak. She met a caregiver in Houston whose employer was stealing her client's Social Security checks. Ruth taught her how to document the theft, how to contact the Office of Inspector General, how to protect herself from retaliation. 3 months later, the employer was prosecuted. The caregiver kept her job. She met a caregiver in Philadelphia whose client was being isolated by her daughter. No visitors, no phone calls, no outside contact. Ruth taught her how to recognize isolation tactics, how to report to Adult Protective Services, how to document the pattern. The daughter lost guardianship. The client moved to a facility where she could see friends. She met a caregiver in Minneapolis whose client was being medically neglected. Medications withheld, doctor appointments canceled, treatment delayed. Ruth taught her how to photograph medication bottles, how to contact the client's physician directly, how to make a case for emergency intervention. The client got the care she needed. The family member responsible was removed from medical power of attorney. Every story was different. Every outcome was different. But the core was the same. Someone saw suffering, documented it, reported it, and changed what happened next. That was the work. Not glamorous, not always successful, but always necessary. In October, Ruth got invited to speak at a conference on elder abuse. Medical professionals, social workers, attorneys, policymakers, people who wrote laws and protocols. She was the only caregiver on the panel, the only immigrant, the only person who'd lived the reality everyone else just studied. She stood at the podium and told them what they needed to hear. You write policies about mandatory reporting, about documentation requirements, about evidence standards, and those policies matter. But they only work if the people doing the reporting feel safe enough to do it. Most caregivers are immigrants. Most are women. Most are making minimum wage or less. Most can be fired without cause, deported without warning, silenced without consequence. Your policies don't protect them, so they stay silent. And the abuse continues. She saw uncomfortable faces in the audience. She didn't care. If you want to stop elder abuse, stop putting all the responsibility on the people with the least power. Build systems that protect caregivers when they report. Build immigration pathways that don't depend on employer sponsorship. Build labor laws that make retaliation illegal and actually enforce them. Build a world where speaking up doesn't cost someone everything. Then you'll see reporting rates go up. After the speech, 3 policymakers approached her, wanted to know more, wanted to build those systems. Ruth gave them research, data, testimony from caregivers who'd lost everything for doing the right thing. Didn't know if anything would change, but at least they were listening. November brought the Foundation's 1-year anniversary. They celebrated at the office. Over 200 caregivers attended. Some flew in from across the country. Some drove for hours. Some brought their clients, the people they'd saved by refusing to stay silent. Barbara spoke, from her wheelchair in the center of the room, surrounded by people who existed because she'd existed loudly enough to be heard. A year ago, I was being erased. Today, I'm here. That's not a miracle. That's a choice. My choice to speak. Ruth's choice to listen. Your choice to learn. We built this together. Not because we're heroes, because we're human. And humans don't watch each other suffer without trying to help. That's the Foundation. Not a building, not a non-profit. Us. People who choose each other over silence. The room erupted. Ruth watched from the side, saw faces she'd trained, stories she'd heard, lives that had changed because one woman refused to disappear and one caregiver refused to let her. After the celebration, Ruth and Barbara went back to the penthouse. It was Tuesday. Jollof rice was waiting on the stove. They ate together in Barbara's room. Outside, the river was black under November clouds. I've been thinking about what comes next. Barbara set down her spoon. For you or for me? Both. I'm 72. I teach at the Foundation. I read. I argue with you about books. I watch my stepson date a woman who might actually be good for him. I'm content. What comes next for you? Ruth had been thinking about this for weeks. The Foundation is stable. We have staff. We have funding. We have systems that work. I'm not needed every day anymore, so I'm thinking about what else needs building. Like what? Like networks. The Foundation trains caregivers. But caregivers need more than training. They need legal help. They need immigration support. They need places to live when they lose their jobs for reporting. They need a system that doesn't just teach them how to document abuse, but actually catches them when they fall for doing it. Barbara smiled. You're building an empire. I'm building what I needed when I was standing in Michael's office being told I was making unfounded accusations. I'm building what Maria needed when she was deported for trying to help you. I'm building what every caregiver needs to know exists before they decide silence is safer. Then build it. And Ruth did. Spent the next year expanding legal aid fund, housing assistance, immigration clinics, partnerships with organizations that already did this work for other populations. Built a network that could hold people when the systems failed. By the 2nd anniversary, the Foundation had trained over 5,000 caregivers, helped prosecute 37 abuse cases, saved an estimated 200 clients from ongoing harm. The number was imprecise, hard to measure. But every number represented a person who was safer because someone had learned to see what was happening and had the tools to stop it. Ruth stood in front of the Foundation office in Manhattan. The sign above the door read, Thompson Foundation for Elder Care Advocacy. Barbara's name, Barbara's legacy. But the work inside was everyone's. Every caregiver who'd taken the training, every client who'd been saved, every person who'd chosen speaking over silence. Her phone rang. A caregiver in San Francisco needed help documenting financial abuse. Ruth talked her through it, sent her the forms, added her to the network, one more person who knew they weren't alone. She hung up, looked at the building, thought about the 43 floors she'd climbed in one suitcase worth of dreams, thought about her grandmother who'd told her what her hands were for. thought about Barbara who'd reminded her when she forgot. The work wasn't finished, would never be finished. There would always be people suffering in silence. There would always be caregivers afraid to speak. There would always be systems that protected abusers over victims. But there would also always be people who refused to accept that. People who saw suffering and moved toward it instead of away. People who chose each other over silence. Ruth was one of those people. Had always been. Would always be. She walked inside. There was work to do, and her hands knew exactly what to do with it.